230 years, the Carolina Youth Development Center has been empowering and equipping the most vulnerable children in the Lowcountry by providing them with a safe environment through a myriad of resources. I talked one-on-one with the Executive Director of the Carolina Youth Development Center, Beverly Hardin, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Beverly Hardin, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here. It's wonderful to have a chance to connect, and what an honor to be interviewed by you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Happy to do it. You know, obviously, you're the Executive Director of the Carolina Youth Development Center up in North Charleston, and we last connected virtually during the City Council meeting in October when, you know, of course, you got a proclamation for your organization, and I got a proclamation for, you know, what I do. But I understand, obviously, that the Carolina Youth Development Center's mission is to empower and equip our community's most vulnerable children by providing a safe environment, educational support, and career readiness in collaboration with families and community partners. Let me ask you this, Bev. How vulnerable are the children today?
That's a really good question. Our organization has been around since 1790, and since 1790, 230 years, there have been kids that needed a place to go. They needed a safe place. They needed a chance, a second chance. And today's children are no different. There are children who just need a place to go. There are families who need help. Mostly for 230 years, we've worked with children in foster care. And for the children coming out of the foster care system in South Carolina, actually nationally, we know that they have a hill to climb that's just a lot more difficult than kids who are not in that system. 1 in 5 children will be homeless by the age of 18. Only 2% have any chance of finishing a college degree. Many will drop out of high school. Only 50% are going to be able to, the statistics show, able to hold down a job by the age of 24. And among the young women, the statistics say that 71% will be pregnant before they turn 21. That just makes a really hard start in life, and our job is to destroy the statistics. What we want to do is give kids the support and wraparound services. We want to give them the opportunity to say, I don't have to be a statistic. I can make it, and I can become whatever I want to be. And that's really what we're all about. But our kids are indeed vulnerable. There are a lot of challenges, and they need caring people, and they need safe places, and they need resources and chances. And I didn't have it all together at 21. Sometimes you just need a safe place to fall too.
Exactly right. You talk about those challenges, Bev. What are those challenges? And let's just make it abundantly clear, we're still in the midst of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's COVID. It's poverty. It's not having enough jobs. It's lack of transportation. It's also lack of some fundamental things. And when you think about how you were raised, I had a mom who was very quick to tell me when I was doing something out of line. Right. And it starts just as simply as social skills and lessons that we don't even realize we're learning. How to accept no for an answer, how to follow directions, how to make eye contact and communicate effectively. And if you didn't have somebody to teach you those things, then you have a hard time learning them. Right? So when we have kids that come to us and they haven't had the right support or the right structure in their home, they haven't had the right people investing in them, part of our job is to backfill lessons that we may or may not know that they've missed, right? And so we use a model called the Teaching Family Model. And the idea is that there are 57 basic skills that kids need, just like the ones we just talked about: how to follow directions, how to make eye contact, how to accept no for an answer. And then they become more sophisticated as the kids move down the line. But it's the things that prepare you to interact well with your boss and to get raises and promotions and to be, successful in a relationship and to have your own family one day. So those are, it's not just the obvious, the poverty, the lack of transportation, the lack of educational opportunities, or the lack of support to pursue the educational opportunities. It's also those, some people call them soft skills. I call them the essential skills of human interaction and really making sure that you have the information you need to master your future, right?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about this too, Bev. And obviously, we're in the age now that everything is on the phone and everything. How hard is that to make? How hard is that for you as far as trying to make sure these kids get basic skills in the midst of a social media era?
It is challenging. My husband is an old educator, retired educator. He's not an old, he's a retired educator. Let's say that. I hope he never sees this, right? But he, when he goes in the classroom, he has a saying, apples up, and whether it's an Android or an Apple, the point is, turn it over, let go, walk away. I think that really has impacted our world today. The lack of human interaction is quite complicated. For children in foster care, it's also a coping mechanism. When the world around you is difficult to deal with and you can get lost in your device, it's really easy. We all know how addictive they can be, our technology and social platforms. We also know how hurtful they can be, and then how important it is, because we all need that human touch. And so that's one of the things that's helpful for us around the teaching family model. We actually work really hard to make sure every child has a proactive, 20 proactive teaching moments throughout the course of every day. And one of the things that's important about that is that if I can find a child doing the right thing, if we can practice doing the right thing in quiet moments, then, for those people who have children, everybody's had the experience of being in the line in the grocery store and the meltdown over the Snickers bar, right? If you practice it and practice and practice, you don't have to have the meltdown in the line over the Snickers bar. So then the lessons come back to you at the time that you need them, and you're able to display them. And that really helps too. So how do we motivate kids to put down the cell phones and to put down the social media and engage in those interactions? We give them points. And at the end of the day, so they're earning proactive points. They're not losing negative points, right, but they're earning proactive points. And if we can motivate a child to help us through 20 practice sessions a day, the kids are changing, the behaviors change, right? They learn to interact. They learn to develop the social skills and the behavioral and the self-control and self-regulation. And the world becomes a little bit easier.
Absolutely. And which one of those sessions are actually popular at the center?
Well, they're all popular, and our kids are very quick to tell you, they get very excited about moving to the next set of goals. So probably the most exciting opportunity is the opportunity to advance. So you master 7 goals at a time, and 7 workshops at a time. And as soon as you get to the next one, they're very excited. So if one of our staff members takes a little time off, if they go on vacation for a week and they come back and they're still trying to work on the old set of goals, somebody will tell them in a hurry, "Oh no, Miss Bev, I'm way past that." And that's where it gets fun. It gets fun to see our young people taking control of who they are, where they are, and taking control of their futures. They want to grow and learn as much as we do. It's fascinating, Quintin. We had a strategic planning session a few weeks ago with our adults, and we put the kids in a room, and we basically said, we want to hear what is important to you guys. And most of our kids are around 15 to 21 years old, so they're older teens and young adults. But they still have very specific views of what they want to take away. And they said some things that were really fun and that you would expect. We want a dog, and we need a mascot, and can I be the one that dresses up in a costume, But they also said that's exactly right. They also said some things that were kind of profound. And they basically said, we're here because we need you. And you guys have figured out this life thing. You're all professionals. You all have careers. You figured it out. And we want you to teach us, because we need to figure it out. And even though we don't always have good days, and even though we're not always appreciative, we always understand that you're shaping us at the most critical time. And this is a time where we can make it. And this is a time where we can learn how to get back up again and become resilient and keep trying and keep trying. And that was something that really hit home for us. And I think that we continue to keep that as a heartbeat of what we do. Is every child needs a chance, every child. And we want to be that chance. We want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to help the children reach their dreams, even if it's as simple as just growing up and having your own family. it's important.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask this question at the end, but I can ask it now. But which one of those children, Bev, resembles a younger Beverly?
Oh my goodness, every single one of them. In some form or fashion, every single one of them. We have a young man who is, we have a couple of kids I'd love to tell you about. We have a young man who has a little piece of all of our hearts right now. He's been with us for about a year and 3 months. He's had a tough story. You know, he basically, his mom got pregnant much too young and wasn't able to care for him. He was living with an aunt. She had some health problems and wasn't able to continue caring for him. And then he started being passed around. So he engaged in the Department of Social Services system. He would go someplace and have a bad day. Sometimes it's your roommate that has a bad day and you get blamed for it. And he was, sent out of one place and into another. And he kind of experienced a little bit of a revolving door. And when he landed here with us, it was so interesting because he came to us about 2 months before COVID really shut things down. And in that first month or two, he was like not sure about us. He doesn't know us. We don't know him. He's, feeling kind of angry, scared, confused, unsure what his future is, doesn't know how long he's going to be here. Is he going back with his aunt? Is his mom going to stabilize and be able to take him home? So many unknowns. And it's really hard to be a young person with so many unknowns around you. COVID was probably the best thing that ever happened in this young man's life. And he just needed stability. He just needed some stability. And with being here every day, seeing the same faces, knowing that people were investing in him, taking the chance to really learn and grow and unlock some of his potential. This young man who was on, never made better than a D or a F is suddenly on the AB honor roll. He is just received a nice award in his history class. He's getting a lot of recognition. He's getting achievement. And I think the thing that I look at him and I'm so proud of him because he's finding out who he could be when he tries, and if he has the right support structure around him. And to me, that's the part in him that I see a little bit of in all of us, and especially in me. There was a time in my life when I didn't know what I could be. I never had any idea I was going to grow up and work in the nonprofit sector and run an organization as cool as CYBC. I just, I didn't know what I could be, but with the right soil and water, that little seed sprouted and we grew. And it's really fun to watch him grow. It's really fun to watch all of our kids grow. And I can't wait to see where he ends up in the world because he's going to be a leader. I try to tell him to come to work for us, and he says, "Oh no, I might have to work with a knucklehead like me." That's exactly how I feel too.
And how do you describe yourself as a leader, Bev?
Growing. As a leader, I think that the most important thing I can say is that I am growing. And we just last week had a leadership team retreat for our directors. And one of the things that came out of it is that, part of what we were hoping to do was to just push a reset button. COVID's been hard for this group of people, especially for everyone all over the world. COVID's been hard. For this group of people, especially, there was no stopping. And I've got an amazing team of heroes who knew that we have kids that just have nothing else. And there is no stay at home. There's a get up and let's go take care of the kids. Right. Let's help the kids continue their education. Let's help them stay engaged and active. And, we don't have the ability to work from home. We don't have the ability to close our doors because there are kids that need us. And so our team is tired. They've been through a lot. We're excited to be have everybody vaccinated. We're excited to be moving to the future, but I felt like we needed a reset button. So that retreat was basically a chance for us to say, all right, you guys, we're here. We've had a hard year. It's been good, bad, ugly, fantastic, amazing, scary, all the feelings, right? You have all the feels. And how can we just put it behind us and get ourselves ready for the next charge? Because we've got a new round of kids coming. And that's the thing. I think the lesson for all of us is, every day we have a chance to start again. And every day we have to open ourselves up to support each other as we start again. And just grow into the leaders we want to become and grow into the role models that we want to be for the kids we serve.
Absolutely. You talked earlier about the strategic plan that you all are obviously developing for your particular organization. Let me ask you this. How do you strengthen the individual and collective impact on the youth through sheer measurement, continuous quality improvement, professional development, and advocacy?
So that's a big question, and it's a really important question. I think that the most important thing that we do is stay focused, laser focused on our goal, which is disrupting patterns that lead families to separate. What we really want is for families to heal. What we really want is for people to get the support they need. What we really want is for children to not have to repeat the patterns of the people that came before them. And it's really easy for all of us to fall in line with following through on those patterns. But I think to truly disrupt generational problems that stem from poverty, no, very few people wake up in the world and say, I want to hurt my child today. Most people wake up and they want to do the best they can to get through. Most people wake up and they say, well, this is what my mom did, and this is what my grandma did, and this is what I'm going to do. This is what my dad did. This is what my grandfather did, and this is what I'm going to do. And you know, you just don't know better. When you know better, you do better. Maya Angelou was so brilliant, right? But it's not always that simple, and you need somebody to show you the way. And that's really what we are, is hopefully a light in the dark to say there's a new way, and let's take you down a new path. I think it's always also a chance for us to say it's okay to make a mistake, right? And this goes back to growing as a leader. I think we want to grow as a community and grow as a family too, and say, you know, it's okay to tell your children, I did it wrong, I'm going to do better, give me another chance. It's okay for children to tell their parents, hey, listen, I didn't understand or appreciate the lessons, and I may not still have the full picture, but you know what, I'm going to try to do my part. And I think that if we can all accept that spirit as, you know, an individual organization, as individuals within the organization, as a community, I think that for us as a community, it's about healing, it's about nurturing, it's about caring, it's about supporting one another, and it's about developing the kind of community, the kind of state, and the kind of world we want to live in together. So I think all of those things are part of that plan, and certainly the advocacy piece too. I think that if our elected officials and our leaders are keeping in mind that we're developing the community that we want to live in, and no piece is too small. Every piece counts, right? That's what this is about collectively for us.
And that brings me to my next question. Obviously, your vision is that all children will have a loving and stable families, and obviously nurturing community empowerment that will lead them to successful lives. Where is the community development these days?
So it's different. It's changing. You know, we used to be very active people. We had hundreds of volunteers coming to our campus. We were going out into the world a lot and being around a lot, getting engaged in a lot. One of the things that we teach our kids to do, we have a summer program. It's a really cool summer program called Freedom School. And Carolina Youth Development Center actually brought the first Freedom School to Charleston. And it's such an important model. I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but it starts every morning with a group called Harambe. In Swahili, that means join together. And so we have this moment where we join together and we do a little bit of learning and we do a little bit of celebrating, and we have cheers and chants, and then we have a motivational song where we start our day together on the same page. And it's such a powerful thing. Freedom School is all about community activism. It's very literacy focused. So it's a great program for, you know, to encourage children to read and to get engaged in literacy type activities. But it's also about taking ownership of the world around you. And part of what we do with every Freedom School is we pick a problem. And sometimes it's, you know, in the election years, it was, hey, let's register to vote because our votes matter. And how do we tell people our votes matter? Last summer, when the riots were happening around Charleston and there was so much going on, you know, it was just basically saying we want to live. Our kids were telling us we're scared because we see videos on TV and our school is right in that neighborhood, and we don't really know what that means, and we don't really want that to be the place where we live. We don't want to be scared in our neighborhoods. We don't want to be scared in our homes. And so then the question becomes, what can you do about it? And I think that that's the same question that you're asking. With COVID, it looks a little different. Like, we might have marched, but you know what? Sometimes you can write letters to people. There's still a newspaper. There's still a mayor. There's still a police chief and the sheriff. I think there are people, and that actually was one of the most pivotal moments since I've been at CYBC. We actually had a mayor come to see us, and one of our children looked at him and was trying to understand his district. And, so this street to this street and that street to that street, just trying to wrap around. You're in charge of all of it. And the follow-up question stopped me in my tracks, and I'm sure it stopped him too. The follow-up question was, well, why do so many people die under your charge? Why are so many shootings happening under your charge? And you're exactly right. It just got really solemn really fast. But even our kids are saying we need to take ownership, right? We need to create the world around us that we want to see. And if there's too much violence and there's too much hate, we need to get to the root causes. What's the cause? And in my heart of hearts, Quintin, I really believe that 99% of our world's problems stem back to poverty, not having enough. And that's something that we should be able to solve in our lifetime, yours and mine. We should be able to figure out how to get people enough, right?
Yes, ma'am. This is another question too that I was just thinking about, Bev. But how do you identify a provider-driven youth that outcomes framework that includes how much, how well, what's the difference, and build a shared measurement system with the potential to scale it?
So fascinating question, tough question, because we're in a human business, and humans don't always produce outcomes that fit into a pretty little box.
Yes.
But that's important. And a lot of what we're measuring today to gauge success and to try to create replicability are wrapped around resiliency skill building. So we have a program, it's called Success Highways, and it's a science-based program, which I think is really fascinating. It basically, the premise behind Success Highways basically says that there are a few factors that we can measure and gauge that will determine whether or not the child is equipped with what they need to become successful as an adult. And by becoming successful, it means holding down a job, having an appropriate place to live, making sure that you have enough of an education to open the doors and opportunities, having a good, safe, solid family, right? And so some of those skills that they talk about in Success Highways that we're measuring are, we know that a high school diploma is so critically important. But before you can get the high school diploma, you have to understand why education matters. So we can measure whether or not you value education, right? I have a young man who lived with us for a while, about a year, who was a really great example of that. This young man was brilliant, smart. And he made straight A's in school, didn't have to study, just easily did very well. But he didn't value education. It came very naturally and easily. He didn't understand why it was important. So he actually went through an interesting process with us where he basically graduated high school, got his diploma, top of his class. We enrolled him in Trident Tech, and he said, I don't really know that I need college. I think I'm fine on my own. I've got it all already. Some of us might be stubborn that way, right? We think we have all the answers already. So he gets a job, and he's working at one of the local shops, and he's got a good job. He works hard. He works a lot. He has a tremendous work ethic. And he's, working a lot of overtime, making a lot of money. Do you know this young man saved $10,000 in 1 year? Built his bank account to save $10,000 in one, just disciplined and focused. Right. But he didn't value education, and that's really important for him. And it really didn't hit home until he said, I'm ready for my apartment. And so we took him apartment shopping. And he said, how much money do you want to spend? I want to spend $300 a month. Well, $300 a month doesn't go very far in Charleston as far as rent goes.
No.
And so we took him to some places that were in his price range, and he was like, oh. And so we took him to some places that he wanted to be, and he looked at the bill and he says, oh. Well, then he has a different perspective about why education is important, and he was able to re-enroll and realize that, my job with a high school diploma is going to max out here, and this is going to be the lifestyle that goes with that job. And it was just a really important teachable moment that helped him understand how you value those things. So I think that finding the right measures is key. You can create if you set outcomes and you know what you're working to achieve, and you look at the measures like valuing education, and you say, how do we help kids understand? Every child has a little bit of a different strategy that they need to get there. But I think that we're beginning to do a much better job of understanding what those measures are that lead to the outcomes that we want to produce, which then allows for replicability.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And Bev, let me ask you, where do you increase the number of providers that engage with the Youth Development Center, do a more robust web presence, do network activities, and do acting with data?
So we work with organizations all over the country to just gather information and look at different strategies, compare notes. I mentioned earlier that we're part of the Teaching Family Association.
Yes.
And through the Teaching Family Network, they're actually an international organization. So we can even hear what people are doing in Norway and Sweden and Australia and all over the world. The truth of the matter is that every country and every land has teenagers that need help, and being able to compare notes with a wide network and learn from some of the brightest minds, and also learn from people's struggles, right? Because sometimes you learn as much or more when you haven't figured it out yet than you do when you hit it on the mark. So that's probably one of the most powerful tools and resources we have. Also for advocacy, we're doing working really hard, and I think that it makes a big difference to help us advocate when we know that we have resources and support, and we're headed down the right path, and there are other people that can come down the road with you.
Absolutely. And I wanted to back it up for just a minute and talk more about the measurement with scales, because how do you focus on the center's operation to ensure sustainability and scale?
So CYBC, as a 230-year-old organization, has a very long story. And we've been through good times and bad, wars, depressions, economic crises, hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. This is even our second pandemic, 230 years is a long history. And I think everybody that works for CYDC takes that very seriously, and it's really impactful and meaningful. We all know that we're caretakers of this organization. None of us have ownership of it. We're all caretakers. And during the time that we're here, we want to be really great caretakers of such an important legacy. We were the first municipal orphanage ever opened in the United States, operated the first kindergarten. We're an important piece of history. We had a guest yesterday that told me something I had never heard before. He said that for a long while, we were the largest residential building, even bigger than the White House, for many years. And so there's a presence about this place that just is important. It's historically significant. It's important to our community. It's an important resource. It has been for a long time. So that sustainability piece is critical. And in years like this, we want to make sure that we are being good stewards of the resources we have, careful stewards of the resources we have, that we're getting through the hard times and we're getting through the good times, and that we're planning for the thousands and thousands of children that are going to need us in the future.
Yes, ma'am. And where do you expand access to and the quality of youth development and learning opportunities?
So we are constantly learning. And in fact, that's one of our team's core values is always teaching, always learning. We learn a lot from each other. We learn from our networks, that Teaching Family Association network. We have a statewide network of nonprofit child welfare experts that we learn from and we work closely with. We learn from what's happening on the federal level. There's a group called the Child Welfare League of America. And then there's an Alliance for Children and Families that is a national organization. And I think the chance for us, and then of course there's the research component. So much information is coming out right now about trauma and how to deliver trauma-informed care. There's a fascinating group out in Nebraska. Boys Town is the nonprofit organization that does similar work to us. They've been around for a good while, and there's a researcher there that is helping them scan the brains of the children coming into their care to see what the damage, what the damage is for children who've lived their life in trauma. And then they do a scan as they leave to see if there's any hope or chance that some of that damage has been repaired. What we know, the neuroscientists know, is that when you are living in trauma for long periods of time, your brain rewires to function differently. And as your brain rewires, you respond differently. And so if I grew up in a household with a lot of violence and a lot of trauma, and you grew up in a very quiet, calm household that just went about their business and had the appropriate structures, your response is going to be what we would consider a normal response. And my response might be totally inappropriate by standards, by normal people's standards, right? But my response is a learned response, which means that I have to unlearn it and learn a new way, right? And I think that that's really what this is about, is figuring out, understanding, number one, that there's nothing simple about working with children who've lived their life in trauma, or adults for that matter. That it's not just about behavior. It's not just, hey, why can't you control this, or why can't you act right, or why can't you do better? Part of it is the way your brain has been rewired, right? So it's quite complex, and I'm very pleased. I think this also speaks to some really important steps that have happened in the child welfare industry over the past few years. Years ago, the job of an organization like ours is to take children in a crisis situation, get them out of the unsafe situation, bring them in, wrap around them, keep them safe, create a safe haven around them, right? Today, our job is to take children out of an unsafe situation, get them in a safe situation where they can stabilize. And then once we've helped them stabilize, then we can take them and we can help them prepare for the future. And then we also want to be reaching back into their homes and saying, how can we help fix what's wrong here? Because there's something broken. We live in a broken world. There's something broken where families are being disrupted and displaced. And at the end of the day, every child in our care wants one thing, just to go back home. They want their home to be better, and they just want to go back home. So if we know that, then I think as we're helping the child, we have an obligation to reach back in and help the family.
And how do you holistically support young people in their social and economic development that will transfer into all the areas of youth lives?
That's a really good question, and we work hard to do that. Our kids get a lot of socializing because there are more of them than us. So each one of our cottages, we have about 4 little cottages right now where our kids live. Each cottage houses about 8 to 10 kids when we're at full capacity, and then there are 2 adults that are on shift to help take care of those kids. So it's a little bit like summer camp all the time. We try to keep the kids very active and engaged. They have all kinds of activities and resources. We take field trips with them. They do everything from help learn to cook dinner to shopping. We have an after-school program where we're working with them. We have a music therapist. We have a grief group because a lot of our kids are grieving. We have a lot of playtime too. So basketball is the number one sport around here. We have a nice volleyball net that just can't hold a candle to the basketball court. But also trying to help support the kids in their school activities. And that's such an important part of growing up years. And we have a young man now that just made the football team. We'll definitely have a crowd at those ball games, and really excited about that. I think our schools do a really great job of helping to reach out to our kids, and we have wonderful relationships with our counselors. We have therapists and case managers on campus that really try to dig deep with the kids. But, maybe one of the greatest gifts of the pandemic was just a chance to let our kids play again. When we were home all day, they were doing things that I haven't seen them do in a long while, like heights. And many of them, it was the first chance they'd ever had to fly a kite, which was very cool. So, we work hard to keep them engaged and make sure they have a robust, full schedule. Little time for sleeping in. That's the number one complaint. We want to sleep late. Just like every teenager.
Yes,
Just
yes,
like every teenager.
yes, absolutely. And I needed some help on cooking myself. But how do you
Hmm.
create a culture shift that allows youth serving stakeholders to build trust, collaboration, and that collective that will eventually expand opportunities in the Tri County area?
So I think that there are a couple of different perspectives that come to mind. I think we have the perspective of our children going into the community. And I think that there is a piece of trust there that feels really important. Our kids have a hard road and they need a little patience, and our adults need to be aware of the unique set of needs that surround our kids. And we have a few partnerships that are just really important to us. Cummins Turbo Technology is one of our great partners. They have been very understanding about the needs of our kids, and also very committed to helping us figure out how to overcome the challenges, which is tremendous. And it's taken us years to say, hey, our kids need jobs. You need a workforce for, especially some of their skilled labor roles. I think that it could be a really good fit. But again, those soft skills, those essential skills are the things that usually our kids trip up around. We had a young man a while back that lived with us, and he went to work for them. Nobody ever told him that you have to call in sick if you're sick. It just somehow is a lesson that none of us realized that he didn't understand.
Mm.
And he didn't feel good, and he thought about it, and he was like, well, there's 300 people out there. They're not even going to notice I'm gone. I don't need to tell anybody. So, he doesn't show up, and he doesn't tell anyone, and we didn't know, and he didn't ask, and he didn't know to ask. But those are the places that catch you off guard, right? How do you know until someone teaches you? And if no one teaches you, you don't know. And that's a place where having partners like Cummins for us has been solid gold. Trident Tech also has been such a wonderful, amazing partner for us. We have so many partners, really and truly, but the ones who are willing to put themselves out there and understand the unique needs of our kids and help us push through to solutions instead of just saying, oh, wow, this is hard, or oh, wow, this is complicated. No, we're going to stay the course and push through until we can get solutions, because the kids need us and we need them. I mean, it's that old saying, the children are our future. But it's also, we're going to get back from our community what we invest into it. And so this is us investing into children in our community so that we can have a return, right?
Absolutely, Bev. And how do you train and mentor that talent in the youth development field?
One child at a time, patiently and slowly. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really so proud of and in awe of our staff every day. I have a team of people that are just tremendous capacity for loving every child. Yes. I have 2 staff members that have worked at CYBC for more than 40 years. Can you imagine? 40 years. How many thousands of kids have come and gone in that time? And these ladies have loved them all. And, that to me is really what it comes down to is how do you care about every child in the way that they need you to? Some kids just need a pat on the back. Some kids need a lot more patience than that. Some kids need to be encouraged and steered in the right way. I think for us, it's just saying, one child at a time, we're going to do our very best, and we're going to lead with our hearts.
Yes, indeed. That's exactly right. And Bev, let me ask you, how do you measure and demonstrate that quality and impact on these particular programs?
So the long-term impact is hard for us to gauge. This is a population that tend to be fairly transient. They like to pick up and go. They don't have necessarily a lot holding them back, or maybe they've dreamed about being with family and they know they have family out of state. Also, our kids don't necessarily love the fact that they're having to spend some time in group care, in foster care. So for some of them, we've had a child or two who didn't want anybody to know that their home had been disrupted. It's really sensitive. It's really personal. There's a lot of judgment. We don't want other kids making fun of them.
Right.
We try really hard to create a sense of normalcy while we help them fix what's wrong at home. So it's not like they really want to be our friend on our Facebook page and keep in touch. Long term, it's really hard to track where kids end up in the world, but we can track for 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months after they leave. And again, our primary goals are you working? Are you preparing yourself for a job? How are you doing in school? Just making sure that they stay enrolled and that they're passing, they're on track to graduate. Making sure that someone is taking the time to sit down with them and help them come up with a life plan. I had a young man here. I'm talking a lot today about our young men. We have some really great young ladies too. But this young man had been diagnosed with ADHD, and his dream was to join the Navy. That was just his dream. He wanted to join the Navy. But no one ever told him that before you can enlist, you have to be off of the ADHD meds for a year. So as we started working with him and creating a life plan, we took him to meet with a recruiter, and he's a junior in high school, so he has plenty of time. But he's going to have to learn some different coping mechanisms to manage the ADHD so that he can meet his goal of enlisting in the Navy. And I think for him, that's the key with all of our kids. If somebody takes the time to say, what's in your heart, what's your dream, right? And everybody has some kind of dream. Even if it's just to drive a red Corvette, maybe that's the dream, right? Everybody has a dream, and if we can help create a pathway toward that dream, then we can produce outcomes. And for us, that's really what we're looking for, is that those essential core things. Do you have positive relationships in your life? Is there a person you can call in the middle of the night who you know is going to be there for you?
Right.
Do you have a good place to live? Do you have a pathway toward education? Do you understand the value and the importance of that? Those are some of the things that we're measuring as we look for 6 months and 12 months and 18 months out.
And what, for example, are social emotional learning practices that you've learned thus far, Bev?
A lot of it is around anger management for us. The social emotional learning is, when you're a teenager, it's really hard for you to process complex emotions like grief and hurt and disappointment and confusion. And a lot of times, most of those emotions come out as anger. What our therapist would say is that anger is a secondary emotion, so we have to dig behind it and look to see what the root is. And I think that's something that is eye-opening and life-altering for some of our kids. How do you look beyond and say, you hurt my feelings, and put your heart out to be vulnerable for more hurt by doing it, right? It's easy to lash out and be angry. It's hard to make yourself vulnerable and to really dig into what the issues are. So we spend a lot of time working on things like that. I think that for the children that we're working with who have homes where there have been disruptions, there's a forgiveness is a big word around here. Just how do we forgive each other? How do you forgive your parents for not being what you needed or taking care of you in the way that you needed? How do your parents forgive themselves for being able to say, because the easy thing to do is to say it's somebody else's fault, right? But for us to take ownership of our own behavior and our own shortcomings, and to be willing to grow and learn past them, and to be willing to forgive ourselves, to be willing to forgive our parents, I think there's a lot of power in that, and there's a lot of growth in that. I think a lot of what we also do with our kids is teach them not to be afraid to care about people. One of the things that you learn very quickly in the foster care system is that your roommate's going to come and go. You might have 2 or 3 roommates in the time that you are here. You've been passed around to, grandma tried to take care of you, and, maybe something happened and grandma got sick, or, maybe you haven't really found your safe place. And what you learn to do as you go through all those transitions and changes Transitions just between schools are hard on kids. Transitions between families are impossible on our children. And it's a heavy load to ask a child to be nurturing and to accept nurturing when all you've learned is don't care too much because you're going to move, right? And so we spend a lot of time talking about how do you nurture yourself? How do you accept nurturing from people around you? How do you figure out who the people are who are safe for you to be around? And then how do you learn how to dig into some of those emotions once you feel safe that are behind the anger, right? And really grieve the loss of your family, grieve the loss of the stability of your environment or whatever the changes that led you down the road. Our kids manifest those things sometimes in physical ways. We have a young lady who, when there is conflict, she will pass out. And it's her brain's way of saying, I don't want to be part of this, right? But that's not a way that she can go through the world. She's got to learn how to deal with the uncomfortableness and not let her brain shut her body down, right? Those are some of the things around trauma that are really tough to manage and cope with. But I have a really amazing team of people, our therapists, our clinicians. Yes. They work so hard and they love these kids so much and they do tremendous work.
Absolutely. And lastly, Bev, I went back and looked at the council meeting from obviously October 13th, 2020. And in that, you said, through it all, you say that you all have grown, changed, and transformed. How will this organization personally change, transform, and grow in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. And I think that's the one thing about CYBC. It is nimble. You don't get to be, she's a lovely 230-year-old lady without being nimble, right? And I think the shift that I see happening in our organization right now is that we're starting to get a little closer to the root of the problems. And by that, I see our work transforming a little bit, not away from residential care, right, but we're shifting more deeply into preventative care, where we're going into homes earlier and we're trying to figure out how we're teaching more parenting classes. We have more support groups. We're doing more for mom and dad and trying to push into the families at a much earlier point. At the first sign that something might not be going great before the family has to be disrupted to see if we can fix it then. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, if we can focus more on pushing into those root causes and saying, hey, family, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay that you don't have all the answers. Let us come help you and let us come be with you. I think that that's happening in our state. I think that that's happening in our nation. I think that that's really important for us to make sure happens in the Low Country. And I think that's the big change for us in the next few years.
That is so amazing. Well, Beverly Hardin, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Take care.